Let's begin. Welcome to the launch of Governing Our Planetary Emergency, the 2023 report of the Climate Governance Commission. I'm Richard Ponzio, Director of the Global Governance, Justice, and Security Program here at the Stimson Center in Washington, D.C. And along with our partners, the Global Governance Forum, World Resources Institute Africa, Council on Energy, Environment, and Water, Plataforma CIPO, EarthNA, and the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, Stimson is very proud to be a member of the steering committee of this important high-level second phase of the Climate Governance Commission project. Before I turn the floor over to Maya Grove, convener of the Climate Governance Commission and moderator of today's launch program, who will soon introduce the Commission's distinguished co-chairs and other remarkable members, as well as partners of the Commission, let me share some brief words about the genesis of the project. In October of 2019 in Seoul, Korea, my Stimson colleagues and I co-organized with former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's Global Green Growth Institute and the Stockholm-based Global Challenges Foundation, a global policy dialogue on the future of climate governance. And it was in connection with this gathering that Maya Grove inspired and rallied many of us participating in today's program behind what would soon become the technical level phase one of the Climate Governance Commission and its path-breaking report, Governing Our Climate Future. Now, with the release of today's Governing Our Planetary Emergency in time for this week's COP28, but also next year's Summit of the Future, you are witnessing the culmination of the project's phase two, which besides benefiting from the rich expertise, wisdom, and creativity of the commissioners, also drew upon the knowledge base and insights of countless scholars, policy analysts, and advocates, including those associated with the Global Governance Innovation Network, the Coalition for the UN We Need, and the Climate Governance Commission inspired, and it will be formally launched in January, mobilizing an Earth Governance Alliance, or MEGA campaign. So thank you to everyone who's contributed their time, energy, and ideas to this project, and most of all to the Commission's tireless, brilliant, and truly visionary convener, Maya Grove, to whom I have the pleasure of giving the floor.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for that extremely generous introduction. And also a really big thank you to you, to all your colleagues at Stimson, for your incredible and steadfast support, going back indeed to 2019 when we first had that strategy session about a global climate governance commission. So amazing to get to the stage with you and all your colleagues. So as Richard mentioned, the launching of this report is really a culmination of wide-ranging expert consultations, stakeholder consultations that we've been really having since 2019, late that year, but in particular since the publication of our interim report in 2021, just before COP26. And now we've had really the brilliant added benefit of the insight of the high-level commissioners, who Richard mentioned, and we'll hear from quite a number of them today. We're really delighted that they can join us for this global online launch. So at the outset, we would all like to also thank the range of generous financial and in-kind supporters of the project, including the Wayfair Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Villars Institute, Global Challenges Foundation, EarthNA Institute, the Stimson Center, Global Academy Foundation, Global Futures Conference, among other partners. And without their support, this commission really could not have done its work. So a huge thanks. Also, thanks to all the experts and researchers who did a tremendous labor to get this substantial report finished and off to printing and publication today. And many are acknowledged on the second page of the report, and there will be a link placed in the chat in this session so you can browse through the report at your leisure. We probably didn't name all of our expert contributors and institutions. We really have this extraordinary community of practice all over the world of really brilliant experts, institutions that have in one way or another contributed to the Commission in this report. So very briefly, in a nutshell, what is the purpose of this report we're releasing now on the eve of COP28? So as you can see as you will see in the report, section 1 in particular, part 1, where we have this really excellent section on the science of the planetary emergency, of where we're at in terms of the climate challenge, contributed by Johan Rockström and colleagues at the Potsdam Institute. And as you all may know, we have now overstepped 6 of 9 planetary boundaries. And so we are in a very, very serious and grave circumstance in terms of the science. And Johan hopefully will say a bit more about that when he joins us shortly. Secondly, the UN Secretary General has noted that we are at a really significant crossroads in human history. The time is so short in order to really reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and to ensure stable and effective planetary boundary and climate governance. So we believe that tightening the screws of current governance and next generation governance at the international level and at all levels is vital. We need transformative steps forward in order to meet the challenge because of the gravity and urgency of the situation. And so we have suggested in this report near-term governance innovation, a top 10 of near-term steps that the international community could take right away in the next 1 to 3 years. And Nudara, I think, has placed a slide of these for you to see. And just to give you a sampling, and again, you can peruse these at your leisure in the report. So the top 10 near term include, for example, improvements of COPs, climate COPs, to focus on delivery, accountability, and engagement of multi-stakeholder coalitions, really driving sharpened action, accelerated action. We should consider at the international level a declaration of planetary emergency, a convening of the UN Secretary General's suggested planetary emergency platform for planetary emergency. We have suggested a possible grand bargain by the big 4 top emitters, joined for other high emitting states, to really show the way and show responsible leadership at this crossroads in history. We also have various other proposals about trade and finance law. How do we close the big finance gap for climate investment law? How do we elevate international climate and environmental governance currently in the international system? And what can businesses do? Next generation city and regional alliances. So there's really a broad range of proposals across various areas of the international system, which we think are necessary because of the all-encompassing effects and nature of the climate crisis. Secondly, on the next slide, there's a top 5 deeper next generation governance proposals set out in the report. And this includes suggestions that scientists have been making for a long time. For example, a global environment agency to defragment and consolidate our global environmental governance, Bretton Woods institutional reforms, and deeper reforms of our broader international architecture. So these are considered to be working proposals. We will be establishing high-level working groups to further refine and take forward these proposals, and working with different stakeholder groups in advocacy to really make sure that these proposals see the light of day and that they're seriously considered by the international community. So without further delay, let's then turn first to our co-chairs and commissioners for their framing thoughts. The importance of this governance lens, any of the content of the report they wish to highlight, and any other thoughts they wish to share with us today. So firstly, we'll turn to Mary Robinson, lead chair of the Climate Governance Commission and chair of the Elders, of course, and also Maria Fernanda Espinosa, 73rd President of the UN General Assembly. Johan Rockström, director of the Potsdam Institute, will join us in a few minutes also. So just a note to the audience, we'll be taking a few questions first for our co-chairs after the remarks, if you put them in the chat, in the Q&A box, and then we'll have a larger, broader question and answer session right at the end of our time today. So Mary, it's over to you to take the floor for your remarks.
Thank you very much, Maya. And I am delighted that we've reached the launch of our climate governance report. And I am very honored to be one of the co-chairs of this huge collaborative effort as Richard and yourself have outlined. This was born in 2019 as an idea, and it has been consulted very widely. It has involved a lot of people. It has been very much a modern collaborative approach to how we make changes at the global level. It's the only way. We have to build the collaboration in order to make the change. And this, I think, is a good example of taking the time to listen, taking the time to consult, taking the time to involve. And I'm very happy with my co-chairs, obviously, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who showed great leadership when she chaired when she was president of the General Assembly, the UN General Assembly. You know, that can be a very dull job or a very exciting way of moving things along. And that certainly happened under Maria Fernanda's time. And she's also very closely involved in a lot of UN reform on things like debt relief and other things at the global level. And that is very important. Her experience is very important in framing this report. And equally, Johan Rockström, we've known each other since we first met in 2014, and he knows I'm a great admirer of his planetary boundaries. In fact, I'm now a guardian of planetary boundaries, so I've no choice but to be very enthusiastic about it. But apart from us as co-chairs, we also have very, very interesting and well-balanced commissioners. We're balanced and diverse in every way, I think, in age, in experience, geographically. We have good gender balance, we good north-south balance, etc. So I look forward also to the comments from our fellow commissioners. And as you explained, Maya, basically we decided to have 10 top short-term recommendations, strong recommendations, and then 5 more medium-term, next generation, as you said, proposals that you outlined very clearly. And in the briefing to us as co-chairs, you suggested we might look for favorites. Now, actually, that's hard to do, because I think one of the strengths of the report is the very fact that it is holistic in its recommendations. But I do, nonetheless, have within the top 10, 2 that I particularly want to highlight. And the first is the need to streamline and reform the COP. I mean, many of us will be at COP at 28. We already know the problems, the problems of a presidency being perhaps somewhat complicit, the problems of 70,000 people, a lot of focus on the non-negotiated side. Some of that is quite important. If we can triple access to clean energy, for example, that's very important, and other things, dealing with methane more rigorously, etc. But we have to have more focus on the negotiated part of a COP. That's where it really matters. That's what the COP's about. It's about the global stocktake and how far behind we are, and the need to phase out fossil fuel and have that in the text. This is the sort of thing that needs to be the real focus of negotiation. And I don't think that is the primary focus of this COP at the moment. We'll see when we start whether we can shift that a bit and get more focus. But that's part of my sense of how important the first recommendation is. And then the one that I like because it enhances the science is recommendation 4. The importance of enhancing the international scientific capacity. And I really wish we could learn more from COVID. Remember that in countries that did best in dealing with the pandemic of COVID, they listened to their chief medical advisors and they followed them. Yes, they had to take government decisions that had to balance some other things, but by and large, they took the tough decisions early because the science was clear that they had to do that. We don't have a status for chief scientific advisors of the same sort. And I kind of think, and again, it's part of my thinking as a guardian of planetary boundaries, that we actually need now to have at the global level more sense of how important the scientific advice is, the climate science, to be grounded resolutely in that. And then in every country to have a chief scientific advisor who advises the government. I mean, I think this would be something that we could really work on and could really make a difference. We have in fact, as our report makes clear, a triple planetary crisis of climate change caused by what we are doing, of biodiversity loss caused by what we are doing, and of pollution caused by what we are doing. And so it's all about how we humans are misbehaving, if you like, and we need new global governance structures to address this. No one country can deal with the aspects of either climate or biodiversity loss or species loss. We need to collaborate and learn the lessons that we're learning in the context of bringing out this report, that we have to understand the need to listen to each other and work together. Of course, it's true that the climate impacted far more on the poorest countries. And so I see this, the launch of this report, is not the end of a process, but the stepping up of that process in every way possible, starting with this COP. We need to promote the report in as many ways as possible on social media, personally, etc. We need a movement to carry this forward to the Summit of the Future and other areas where there will be a need for reform and a need for new governance structures. I wear my Dandelion badge that Maria Fernanda will recognize, because I think Project Dandelion and women leaders can help to promote. And I hope we will all become very familiar with this report and bring it forward. And we know that the world is very distressed by violent conflicts. And some are neglected conflicts, unfortunately, but others impact on our consciousness, none more so than the war in Ukraine, and now in particular, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and indeed the war on Hamas by Israel. I fear and I feel this probably will impact on the COP, but we need to remind ourselves, and particularly to remind young people, that it is not immoral to be strategic. We have to remain strategic at COP about the fact that we're running out of time. And then we also have to bring hope, and this is my last point. We have to bring hope that actually we're on the cusp of a clean energy, healthier, safer, more equal world. It is literally around the corner with the speed that things are happening, but it's not happening fast enough. That's a human problem. If something isn't happening fast enough, we can make it happen faster. We can shift the investment. We can stop the subsidies on fossil fuel. We can counter the negative issues that are preventing us moving that fast. We can do that. It's altogether doable. So let me end with the words of Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it is done. Let's do it together. Let this report be a real help, but let's work after the launch on making it be implemented. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. And I feel like you're answering a number of the questions already in the chat about how are we going to take this forward, building a movement. And we're indeed going to speak a bit later in this session about the Mobilizing Earth Governance Alliance, etc. So to be continued, very much so. Maria, over to you.
Thank you, dear Maya, and it's such a privilege to be co-chairing this commission together with the great Mary Robinson and with one of the most important contemporary scientists on earth science, Johan Rockström. And I really need to congratulate all members, all commissioners, but also all the contributors, the thinkers that have put their wisdom, their intellect, their creativity into this collective effort. And Mary said it so well. This is very modern because it has been extensively consulted. It has been truly a co-creation. And of course, special thanks to Maya Groff, our convener, and the great Stimson Center team, and of course, my fellow co-chairs. I think that, as Mary said, this is the beginning of a big transformation that we have the responsibility to collectively craft. So in the launching of the report, of course, cannot be more timely. As Mary said, we are a few days away from COP28, and we are all expecting to see there resolve, leadership, bold outcomes. And as was already mentioned, the current outlook is bleak. Every report from the IPCC to the UNEP emissions gap report that was launched a few days ago, I think all the news are devastating. It shows a greenhouse emissions increase in 1.2% last year, and that of course explains high temperature records in the past months. This is leading us to a 3-degree temperature rise. As we know, this would be totally devastating for all our countries and peoples, but more importantly, for the small island developing states and for the countries that are the most vulnerable to climate shocks. The majority of them, unfortunately, are in the global south. So the climate crisis is also a crisis of inequality, of injustice. And the truth is that as was already mentioned by Mary, is that we have the science. Each day we know more and we know better about the functioning of our planet and its ecosystems. We have the technology. We are across, the street almost to become a clean energy world. Renewable energy has never been so affordable and within reach, and yet emissions persist in their upward trajectory. So this is a very disheartening fact, considering that we have already exceeded, as the report states, 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries, jeopardizing the fundamental life-supporting functions of our planet. And this has led to devastating consequences for vulnerable communities, as I said, intensifying poverty and hunger, exacerbating global inequality. And unfortunately, time is not on our side. We really find ourselves with a small window of opportunity, not spanning the next decade, but mere 5 or 7 years, to enact a profound reversal of the current emissions trend. And some say that what we need is political will, greater leadership, a sense of urgency. And I would say yes to all of the above. But what we also need is a transformation in the way we govern the human relationship with planet Earth, how we reconcile our economic models, our production and consumption patterns, our development pathways with planetary boundaries. So the climate crisis, as I always say, is a symptom of a deeper systemic crisis. And the purpose of this report that we are launching today is precisely that, to respond to this very broad and difficult question from a systemic and all-encompassing approach. Allow me to share what I believe are the key contributions of the report. And of course, I'm fully biased on this, but I truly believe that the report provides a holistic approach that goes from improving effectiveness of climate decision-making to comprehensive governance transformations that include the 3 planetary crises in a systemic response to the current multifold emergency. So, and we know, and what is that? What is that? That's the whole approach of the report, because nature does not work in silos. Its health and integrity depends on the balance of its interactions and regeneration dynamics. The number 2 issue that I like about the report is that the analysis and the recommendations are backed by hard and strong evidence and science. It brings a fresh and solid planetary boundaries perspective, and it underscores the urgent need for action based on a thorough understanding of our planet delicate balance, and to understand that the planet is finite, in that we need to respect the carrying capacity of our ecosystem. The number 3 issue that I like about the report is that it goes beyond very cold institutional retooling by providing what I would call a value-based solutions toolkit. And that means that it looks at the concepts such as earth stewardship, intergenerational responsibility, the fight against corruption, the call for greater transparency. The number 4 issue that I like is, it is, as we mentioned at the beginning, a very genuine example of transdisciplinary, transsectoral co-creation. This report has involved professionals from diverse backgrounds, lawyers, politicians, earth scientists, indigenous peoples, diplomats. And I think that is what has enriched the outcome of the report. And it has also taken care in a way of the complexity of the challenge we face and the need for a multifaceted response. And finally, I think that the work of the report doesn't stop at diagnosis, at saying what is not going right, what is wrong, but it provides ambitious and forward-looking solutions. And these solutions, as Mary said, are actionable. They can be implemented. And we were asked to pick our favorite recommendations among the excellent top 10 plus the 5 recommendations. And just to close, I will pick 2, just to trigger your curiosity and call the attention of decision makers. The number 1 I would mention is the need for an upgraded UN environmental program, UNEP. What we need is a full-fledged environmental agency entrusted to set norms and standards on environmental protection and support countries in implementation of their international commitments on their multilateral environmental agreements, so as to improve mechanisms of accountability, of compliance, and close the implementation gap that we are witnessing with the 2,000 plus multilateral environmental agreements that we have so far. The number 2 recommendation that I really like, but more than liking it, I think it's crucially necessary. It's the reform of the international financial architecture, including the Bretton Woods institutions. It is so clear that one of the critical obstacles to accelerate climate action is the lack of the means of implementation. So developing countries, as we know, need at least $2.4 billion every year to meet their climate goals. And it's obvious, we need a new climate finance framework that is able to scale from billions to trillions. And for that to happen, multilateral financial institutions need to reset the terms and conditions of access to resources, consider innovative lending mechanisms and concessional resources. They need to recapitalize, meaning they need more money, and they need new governance designs in the way they operate, they decide, they prioritize. So this is one of the recommendations that I think are perhaps more urgent and highly needed. And just to close, let me emphasize that we know after decades that the piecemeal approaches to climate governance do not work. They are ineffective. And what this report is proposing is precisely to redesign the institutions and put in place mechanisms to overcome the current planetary emergency. In short, we need a full-fledged emergency plan to govern the Earth system through principles of cooperation, common interest, and intergenerational responsibility. So this report, at the end of the day, it's a call to action for new and innovative governance to safeguard our planet, to ensure the well-being of the generations to come and the current generation as well. So kudos to this collective work, to this co-creation. And we really look forward to working also collectively to make sure that the recommendations of the report become a tangible reality and improve the way we govern our commons and the Earth system. So thank you again, Maya, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And directly over to you, Johan, in the interest of time. Over to Johan Rockström.
Yes, thanks. And hello, everyone. And not much more to add, really, after these excellent interventions from my dear co-chairs, Maria Espinosa and Mary. Let me say that I think this is probably the first governance or even policy and economics commission report that is so profoundly grounded in the Earth system sciences. So it's in that sense not coming lightly to start a governance report like this with the suggestion of declaring a state of planetary emergency, and that this is not coming lightly. It was a very hard debate in the Commission, founded on the evidence of the Anthropocene, of the tipping points, of breaching 6 of 9 boundaries, of the IPCC conclusion that we're threatening planetary health, that we cannot anymore promise to hand over to our children a planet which is equally stable and livable as the planet we were ourselves born on. We've come to that point. It's not science that is limiting the ability for humanity to have a manageable, even thriving and equitable future for humanity. It's governance. It's our choice. And I think that is, in my mind, a drumbeat of unique strength in this report. And second unique feature here, which I would really recommend you all to so to say highlight and use, is what Maria Espinosa also emphasized, that there are 10 points which are, short-term immediate actions. These are practical, tangible issues that we can resolve immediately. Get rid of the fossil fuel subsidies, move hard on COP reform. And then you have the 5 longer term, recognizing that establishing or reforming the United Nations Environment Programme is a big challenge. And we conclude that we need to operate simultaneously along both of these paths, recognizing the slower variables, but also acting on the immediate fast variables. Again, it's our choice what future we want. I don't, well, of course, I would have picked, just like Mary did on the Science Policy Action Network, because, of course, I have a bias on having maximum of science-based policy, so I won't pick that one. But what I want to really emphasize on the recommendations is this conclusion we come to, that the fact that we're in the Anthropocene actually puts into question the nation state as the only unit of decision making to solve the problems we have in the face of us. We have to take a step beyond that and recognize the global commons are all the biophysical and climate, ocean systems that we all depend on, irrespective of whether they are sitting within national or outside of national jurisdictions. This is a legal and a governance paradigm shift that we simply have to start recognizing and operating against. The second one, I really want to give a warm, applaud for this commission, is the recognition that Earth system justice is a new notion. It's in the academic literature. It has never been recognized in policy before, that there's a new definition of justice. The right of every human being to live on a stable planet, that we've now taken human justice all the way up to the planetary scale. That's a very novel and really important notion. And then absolutely final, Maya, is in my terms, I think the need to move very fast on what we have to come out of COP28, which is in the report, which is to get serious about pricing everything that damages the planet's climate system and the planet's resilience. So putting a price on carbon, and putting a true price on natural capital, I think are topics that simply need to be taken from our report and brought straight into the discussions next week in Dubai. Back to you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Johan, and thanks to the three of you for those excellent framing thoughts and comments, highlighting some of the proposals for further reading. Just before we move to our other commissioners, very swiftly, there are a lot of excellent questions in the chat box, also offers of collaboration or questions about collaboration, some very specific questions which we can try to get back to later or after the session offline. We can get in touch and discuss further. But just to the three co-chairs, any of these questions you might have a quick lightning answer to. Someone asked in the chat, how do we now move forward from voluntary to binding commitments, especially about global common goods? Of course, we touch on this in a number of points in the report. Any broad thoughts you have, is the international community ready to move towards greater accountability for climate and planetary boundaries? What are you all seeing and feeling on the ground from diplomats, political circles? Is there awareness of this crossroads, the seriousness? And there was another question about the BRICS in particular. What could their role be at COP28? I'll just open that to you for quick responses, and then we'll move to the other commissioners. Mary, first to you.
Well, maybe briefly, because I think Maria Fernanda will also have a lot to say about this, but I think there is a real move towards more regulation, more real binding targets for business, for corporations, for investment. And I think we need that more and more. I mean, I think we need to get away from voluntary pledges. I fear that we're going to see a huge number of wonderful sounding pledges out of COP28 on the non-negotiated side, and very little on the negotiated, the work of the global stocktake, the importance of addressing cutting emissions, the importance of addressing really accountability. I agree with Johan, putting a price on carbon globally, putting a price on natural capital. These are the kind of ways in which having science-based targets that are regulated, upheld. This is all where we need to go, and fast.
Thank you, Maria. Any quick response?
Yes, I cannot agree more with my co-chairs here, and I would like perhaps to pick on the issue of the commons and in why it has become a very difficult issue. To say that a healthy and balanced Earth system, it's a common good for humanity, and I think it really coalesces around understanding that national interest has become collective interest. Climate is the typical, common good that is shared, and the atmosphere. The whole discussion is about how we negotiate the use of the atmospheric space, and there has to be justice and equality, fairness, and intergenerational responsibility on that front. And just to echo what Mary said, voluntary pledges are good, declarations are good, but they have to come with integrated accountability and transparency mechanisms. And even on negotiated outcomes of COPs, we see that the implementation deficit is huge. So I think the report brings a set of ideas on how to close the implementation gap and how to be more effective into the liability and accountability side, including the establishment of an International Court of the Environment, which is one of the top proposals of the report. Over.
So much, Maria. Johan, any additional comments?
Yeah, only to say that I think the comment on BRICS is really important, because BRICS is, of course, in a very special position right now, being very rapidly emerging economies in the world, but at the same time at the heart of the geopolitical challenges in the world. But I remain convinced that BRICS, together with the US and the European Union, is the decisive troika in the world. These are the kind of the biggest keystone actors representing over 60%, 70% of global emissions, and that we simply need to take the bull by the horn and start getting serious with the big actors on fossil fuel emissions. And I think BRICS is important to bring along in that discussion in a very active way in Dubai.
Thank you. Thank you very much, co-chairs. And so let's move now swiftly along to our other commissioners for comments in response to anything you've heard and from your unique vantage point on the report. First, moving to Mr. Nobuo Tanaka, former head of the International Energy Agency. It's over to you, Nobuo.
Thank you very much, Maha. I'm very much delighted to join this governance commission of the climate, because I think as former executive director of the IEA, I'm really delighted that energy should be a part of the solution rather than creating a problem. So Fatih Birol, the current executive director of the IEA, mentioned that oil and gas industries at this net zero transition, it's a moment of truth. So without their strong commitment of reducing the operational carbon dioxide emission from their business by 60% by 2030, and also committing that that not only 2.5% currently, the capex of their capex is only for the clean technology, but he urged that the oil and gas company must commit half of the capex must be clean technology by 2030. So this is a really big challenge for the oil and gas industry, which is represented probably in this COP28 for being a partner of the clean future. So I think we are promoting the idea of the global environment and energy agency. I prefer that energy should be a part of this governance and make a big case for the future. And I think companies or countries will urge that nuclear should be triple by 2050 in this COP28, and nuclear should be sustainable to make this growth. And I think there are several conditions for the sustainability, and I think this agency of Global Environment and Energy Agency should take serious look. What is the necessary condition for the nuclear power should be a part of the solution. And I really appreciate this good discussion of the commissioners, and I am very happy to be a part of the contribution. Thank you very much, Maha.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanaka. Over next to Adriana Abdener, a senior Brazilian climate and economics advisor and co-founder of Plataforma Cipó in Brazil. Please, Adriana, over to you.
Thank you, Maya. I hope that you can hear me. I'm actually here already at the COP venue. I have my badge. I have the bags under my eyes. So, and things haven't even gotten off to an official start with the negotiation. So I hope to see some of you here. First of all, congratulations to the Global Governance Commission and for its launch of the report governing our planetary emergency. I am speaking today in a personal capacity, but it's been very interesting because when we started the work of the commission, I was in civil society at a think tank in Brazil. And now, of course, I'm in a policy position. So it's been really interesting to shift positions and see the value of such a commission whose, I think, key role is to expand the frontiers of what we think is possible and the possible pathways in terms of reforms and other innovations that we can try to take forward in multiple spaces. I wanted to make very quickly 3 points. The first one, I think, very much echoes what Mary Robinson said at the onset. Even as we explore innovations, and they run a broad gamut from financing, technology, architectural reform, we need to remember that the climate regime, with all of its flaws, needs to be valued. So I wanted to echo this idea that streamlining the COP, but also going back to treating intergovernmental negotiations and the input of non-state actors into those, acknowledging that this is the primary space, is really essential, because we are witnessing a loss of trust within this regime, and it remains, I believe, the single best way for us to address the challenges at hand. It doesn't exclude the other innovations, but we can't lose sight of what we already have built, and where there is still a lot of promise, especially if we can get a promising global stock taking out of this COP and build a robust road towards the COP in Belém in Brazil. But we also need a global governance that is more democratic, because the lack of adequate representation of developing countries is a deep flaw that not only produces new problems, but aggravates old ones and keeps us from resolving problems that we had decades ago. And it's not just an issue of justice, it's also an issue of effectiveness. And this applies to all of the climate agenda, not just mitigation, but adaptation, resilience, just transition, loss and damage, and so forth. All of this is necessary to rebuild trust in the system, and therefore go back to the idea of a representative and truly effective global governance. The second point I wanted to make, and it's echoed in some of the proposals, is that we do need to keep equity in mind. I don't think we are facing a triple planetary challenge. I think we are facing a quadruple planetary challenge, because in addition to the aspects of climate, biodiversity, and pollution, we are facing a planetary crisis of poverty. When you have more than 1 billion people living under the poverty line, when you have 735 million people going hungry, this cannot be placed in second space with respect to the other crisis. And so we need to go back to bringing attention to the fact that much of the world still faces deep challenges, not only on the environmental and climate biodiversity front. We also need to think beyond sort of nation states. There's a recent report by Oxfam that notes that the richest 1% account for more emissions than the poorest 66%. And we need to think about what this means in terms of political solutions, technological solutions, and financial solutions. And I wanted to close by saying that, from my current policy position as a special advisor in President Lula's office, when I hear about the climate crisis, very often when my interlocutors are in the rich countries, the message is actually about only decarbonization. And decarbonization is very important, but we cannot do that. We don't have the luxury of addressing this exclusively. And I think that the just transition is a very interesting opportunity for us to promote deep structural change in the economies and societies, not only of rich countries, but developing countries, in ways that will help us to address these crises on all of their dimensions. And again, for that, we do need for deeper cooperation, deeper assistance, better and improved financial flows, but also a true spirit of solidarity given our different circumstances. So thank you very much. I look forward to rereading the report, and let's try to find paths ahead in ways that we can land some of these excellent ideas. Congratulations again, and thank you.
Thank you, Adriana, for all of those great points. Let's move next to Sofia Chiani. member of the UN Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change at the UN and founder executive director of Climate Cardinals. Sophia, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I really want to affirm that I do believe that the launch of this report cannot be more important, given that we are just a few days away from COP28. And as a young person, I completely want to highlight that a system-wide approach is going to be critical to solving the climate crisis for the protection of my generation and those to come. I'm honored to have had a voice in the Climate Governance Commission as a young person to help address the crucial gap by developing, proposing, and building partnerships that promote tangible global governance solutions for urgent and effective climate action. And I want to highlight two of the proposals that really spoke to me. First, of course, Proposal 1, the urgent approval of climate COPs to focus on delivery, action, and accountability, as something I think is truly fundamental, given my work previously with the UN's Youth Advisory Group on climate change and now with the UN Foundation. And as someone who's deeply invested in our planet's future, I see the necessity for climate COPs to transform into platforms where action and accountability aren't just discussed, but are realized. And in my last 2 years attending and being invited to speak, I found the entire process incredibly convoluted and self-serving and in urgent need of reform rather than being focused on solutions. I think that there's a lot that we can do to improve these forums and a future where we, the youth, will inherit this planet. It's going to hinge on the decisions and commitments that are made in these forums. I also want to emphasize the importance of Proposal 7, the better use of the International Court of Justice, international law, and UN Human Rights Council. This proposal really resonates deeply with my work and the voices I strive to amplify in the climate discourse. I've seen the urgent need for international legal frameworks to be more accessible and responsive to the needs of young people in marginalized communities. And by advocating for the adoption of a protocol to key environmental agreements that grants the ICJ jurisdiction over environmental obligations, we can really empower citizens and civil society, including youth, to have a significant voice in climate litigation. As a young person dedicated to this cause, I want to finalize my remarks by really urging leaders and policymakers to take this proposal seriously and to act with the urgency that this crisis demands, because our future and the future of other generations to come are going to depend on the actions that we take today. So thank you to this commission. I'm really excited for the report launch and so grateful for everyone here for volunteering their time.
Thank you so much, Sophia. So wonderful to have you with us and to hear really this call from the next generation. Thank you so much for all your efforts and engagement. Let's move swiftly next to Wanjira Matai, Vice President and Regional Director for Africa at the World Resource Institute.
Maya, thank you very much. And thank you to our amazing co-chairs, Mary, Maria, Fernanda, and Johan. It has been such a pleasure working with you. And of course, Maya, you bringing us together to launch this important report. So thank you very, very much. It's an honor really to be part of this team at a time when governance, accountability, transparency is so important at this rate that where we are in terms of the climate discussions, but also the critical decade. We really don't have much time to waste, and science, as we know, getting sharper and sharper. Every time I hear Johan, I think, oh my goodness, what else will we need to be able to take the sort of action that's required? This report is urgently needed at this time when the world is actually gathering in Dubai for the 28th COP, for the biggest accountability moment in climate action, I would argue, to track the climate action that's needed to meet the ambition, but also to look at accountability, implementation, and action. The first stocktake report, as has been mentioned before, states we are not on track, but we see and we feel the impact of climate change everywhere. Almost nobody has to be told. Right now in Nairobi and Kenya, we are facing some of the most devastating floods. More than 150,000 people have been displaced in just this few weeks when we've started these rains. So we know from this report that we're not moving fast enough to cut emissions. We're seeing devastating impacts already, and we just don't have the muscle to withstand what's coming. So over the past few months, I've been wrestling myself with the question of what should happen when parties don't do what they're supposed to be doing. So I go to COP with that mentality that it is about accountability. The science has gotten sharper and sharper. In fact, understand predictions made 20 years ago were moderate in comparison to what we are seeing come to pass. So being clear that we have a rapidly closing window is crucial. And I'm really appreciative of the energy that has been part of this commission as we pull this report together. I'm energized particularly by, I'll share the two proposals that excite me. One is connecting trade and international investment law with climate and broader ecological priorities. This one in particular is at the heart of Africa's growth agenda. We know that we cannot and we will not adapt against abject poverty, and actually we need to build economic muscle to be able to do that. And we know that we have the opportunity to do that in greener and cleaner ways. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreements are an extremely exciting opportunity, but today we know intra-Africa trade stands at only 15%. If you compare that to Europe, where 80% of trade is intra-European, or Asian trade 60%, we know that transforming the lives and livelihoods of Africans across the continent and in most developing countries is also part of what is needed if we transform intra-African trade. The second proposal that excites me is the one on near-term international economic and financial measures, bridging that great finance divide for urgent climate mitigation and adaptation. That's crucially important. We hear all the time, Africa is warming faster than the rest of the world and at a pace that communities cannot keep pace with. So this is crucially important. And for all of us, especially in climate vulnerable countries, the ability to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage is the #1 priority. That means adaptation as we go to COP, crucially important. And going forward, adaptation finance actually went down in 2021. And so we need to see, even as we are focused on a global goal and focused on doubling adaptation finance, the reality of what we are seeing quite different on the ground. So I really look forward to seeing that. And lastly, really the proposal for greater responsibility by developed countries in service of the most affected by climate change, that goes without saying. And we're in dire need, I would say, Mary, you mentioned the Dandelion Project up front, the feminist energy that comes from a movement like that, collaboration, empowerment, inclusion, empathy, compassion, transformational leadership. Those are the things that we need to see more of. And we are in a unique situation where most of those affected are people who understand what we need, but at the same time need the partnership and solidarity of others. So I close with the wonderful African spirit of Ubuntu. I am because you are. This is about our common humanity, calling on the best of all of us to see the best in each of us. Thank you very much for this, and I congratulate all of us on this collective effort.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Wanjira, for those inspiring comments. Now over to Aranava Ghosh, founder and CEO at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water in New Delhi. Aranava.
Thank you, Maya, and good day to everybody who's listening in, and of course to my fellow commissioners. I wanted to first start by congratulating the co-chairs for their and thanking the co-chairs for their leadership, Mary Robinson, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, and Johan Rockström. Thank you for what you do and for bringing us all together. My thanks also to the commissioners, my fellow commissioners, and more than that, the institutions that have collaborated to bring us to the stage we are at now. And of course, huge thanks to Maya Groff, the convener. In Sanskrit, there is a term called Sutradhar, which is the one who holds all the strings. So Maya, thank you for being our Sutradhar. I think the one thing that this report does is it demonstrates in a very fractious time that it is possible to think big and think detailed. And I think that's balance that this report is trying to strike, that it's not just getting lost in the weeds of, paragraphs here and passages there, as it often happens with climate negotiations, as important as they are, but they're trying to elevate what it is that we are here for. But at the same time, not just leaving it at that, 80,000 feet level, but to be able to then dive deeper into how do you get into some of the implementation mode. The way I like to organize my thoughts around this, and I've been involved in this process for a few years now, is what does the report say about ambition, about action, and about acceleration of what we need to do? And if those of you who've yet to kind of go through this report in detail, look at it carefully, these top 10 recommendations that we've come out with kind of some way or the other neatly fall into those buckets. I think the issue around declaring a planetary emergency and thinking about the role of the most powerful actors in service of the planet is or should be the foundation of how to drive ambition forward, notwithstanding that even within those groups, there will be elements of equity and elements of differentiated justice that has to be delivered. But then it's not enough just to have ambition. Dreams, visions without actions remain dreams, or dreams without actions remain visions. So we need to focus on the actions. And again, I think there are some very clear forward-looking recommendations that the report brings out, whether it is in using the science to drive Earth system governance as well as our action, but also using the force of what businesses can do and cities and regional alliances can do. It's very important to understand, where does that action finally unfold? It doesn't unfold through government agencies alone, or in fact, certainly not entirely. So bringing our attention to the actors who can deliver the actions that we need, whether it is business, whether it is cities, whether it is the scientific community, is important to understand how we carry on forward. But clearly, as the emissions gap report also brings out, regardless of our actions, we are not accelerating fast enough. And this is why I think the two recommendations that the report has around the near-term economic and financial measures is absolutely central towards accelerating the work we need to do. That is on the reforming, the lending reforms in the MDBs, particularly in de-risking climate finance and energy finance, and in creating a licensing facility for green technology in order to promote innovators, but also support the deployment and diffusion of technology. But beyond ambition, action, and acceleration, for me, the most important bit, my favorite, is really accountability. And several of us have used the term accountability, and some of us have already used the term trust. There is no doubt that we are in an atmosphere of mistrust, in some cases distrust. And in order to move towards a COPS and a climate governance regime that goes beyond just the FCCC, we have to think of ways to strengthen accountability, both within the FCCC process, but outside as well. And this is where the recommendations around public accountability platforms, around intergovernmental processes, of bringing more citizen participation into the global governance of climate, all of this is absolutely central. And that, to me, is what will distinguish the sort of pre-COP28 and the post-COP28 world. If we don't focus on accountability, we will remain in the same rut that we are in. But to close out, for me, the biggest accountability is that of individuals. And I think over and above the problem of poverty that Adriana referred to, I think there is a serious problem of not looking at ourselves in the mirror. And if we think that technocentrism, technomercantilism, and technofixes can solve the problem we are in, we are tragically wrong. If we don't think and look carefully at our own footprints, we'll simply not have, as Gandhi said, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Even in many developing countries, as CW's report that has come out today says, the per capita emissions of the richest 10% in many developing countries is still lower than the average footprint of many developed countries. And this is a serious problem that we continue to skirt around by saying somehow if we all just came together and promised more things, the problem would go away. The problem is us. And if we don't start fixing accountability with regards to ourselves, the rest is just institutional reform that we're doing to hide behind our own failure.
Thank you so much, Arnaba. And to round out our commissioner interventions, over to Sandrine Dixon de Clef, co-president of the Club of Rome. Sandrine?
Thank you so much, Maya, and thank you so much to our incredible co-chairs for opening up so distinguishably this incredible gathering. I want to make a few remarks building on so many rich remarks that we've already heard. The first is, and I'm calling here from the OECD, and have actually stress tested in time right now the thinking that we have in this report with our OECD colleagues, because we were in a governance session on how we actually enable proper governance through our climate shocks. And I want to bring in a few key points so that we all understand the reality of what we're facing. I think that those of us on the phone, but also those of us who are part of this commission, have all agreed that governance is one of the key failings that we have now before us in front of this planetary emergency, hence why we've been called together to work not only through putting forward this report, but also unpacking some of the key challenges that we have before us. I'm very grateful that actually the Commission has taken on board much of the work that the Club of Rome has been talking about for the last 50 years, whether it be systems approaches to solving the multi-pillar problems and poly crisis that we have before us, whether it be the proposals that myself and Johan put forward 3 years ago on putting forward an emergency plan, or even thinking through now COP reform and the letter that we have put forward actually to the UNFCCC and the UN. But I was shocked to see how difficult the conversation was with the OECD today, and how difficult it is every time we try to speak about new governance within new systems with most of the parties of the UN as well as the UNFCCC. Now, what Mary indicated in the very beginning, and then Maria Fernande also continued with, and Johan, is we are in a deep emergency. And so for me, one of the key points of this reform that is so fundamental is we must declare an emergency at a variety of different levels and put in place emergency plans that take into consideration the broken governance systems that we actually have. That points to our economic system, which we know, and many of the commissioners have already referred to, is currently only servicing shareholder value and profits. So I do believe that number 3 of our reform calls is so fundamental within this report, but also the financial architecture of thinking through debt cancellation, of understanding special drawing rights, and the fact that these rights actually need to go to those countries in the South and low-income countries that need it most, not to the current countries that are getting it in the North. But also, it's absolutely fundamental within our governance calls for us to realize that, as was indicated by Adriana and now by Arunba, that if we continue to not take into consideration inequality and poverty, the speed and scale of action on the planetary boundaries will not be to the level that we actually need it. And this is what has been seen in our Earth for All conclusions with Johan and other authors, which means that all of our governance systems need to be gauged towards enhancing people's lives and livelihoods in the same moment as we need to enhance the health of our planet. So we need to take into consideration, and this is the conversation that I had directly with the OECD, how is it that we work with countries so that they understand that it's not only multilateral conventions or our legal frameworks at the international level that need to shift, but our accounting frameworks at the national level, the way in which we put in place our indicators that go beyond growth, the the way in which we understand that empowerment, as Wanjira so clearly said, is fundamental if we are going to ensure that we reduce populations in some parts of the world, but also look into demographics across the rest of the world. And then finally, I think it's very important that we realize that this COP reform is really staring us in the face. We've seen the BBC report this week, which indicated very clearly that unfortunately, the current president that we have in the UAE has actually moved forward and continued to speak to negotiators around production and the continued enhancement of extraction towards oil and gas economy. We also have seen that we now have 70,000 participants that have signed up to descend on the COP, double the size that we had actually in Sharm el-Sheikh just last year, and that potentially Brazil would not be able to honor all of us to come if we were such a large group of participants in 2 years. So it is time that we think through, and there is a question in the chat which is fundamental, is how do we ensure that we actually focus on ambition in the negotiations and yet continue to honor stakeholders and non-state actors? And there are many ways in which we can do that, and we demonstrate that in our calls for reform. Smaller meetings, regional meetings, ensuring that during the course of the year we gather more often, that actually stakeholders are engaged, but in different types of conversations, so that we don't turn this into another jamboree and another trade show. And most importantly, and I'll end with this, that we need to continue to inject science in our thinking as we move forward towards more ambitious objectives, because for the moment, we are not injecting the science necessary directly in the negotiations. And that science needs to be the hard facts around, obviously, climate impacts, but it also needs to be the hard facts around the social sciences and the fact that actually all the work that we have done collectively demonstrates that global well-being of citizens is going down, and that most citizens are asking for a well-being economy, not a continuation of the extractive economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandrine. And as everybody can see, the incredible rich knowledge and expertise and really vital perspectives brought by all of our diverse commissioners, and how interdependent all these various global challenges are. So we have challenges to tackle that are interlinked. We have work to do, but we are of the view that we can rise to the challenge. And so this next segment we have is a very important segment, I think, with our some of our collaborators, a sample of our collaborators from civil society and the advocacy sphere, from progressive business. So I'm going to turn over to these speakers next, and for short, 2 to 3 minute interventions, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. We'll also, run over a little bit as needed to try to get a bit more time for questions. So first, I'll turn to Veena Balakrishnan, who's a co-founder of the Youth Negotiators Academy and Youth Negotiator Program, as well as Nishan Gunasekera from the Mobilizing Earth Governance Alliance and the Earth Trustee Working Group, two youth and civil society platforms that we look forward to working with further. Then I'll turn to three progressive business representatives: Marcello Palazzi, the Be for Good Leaders Network co-founder of B Corp Europe and global ambassador; Badra Kanaya, managing partner and co-founder of Sunways Global, a solar and distributed renewable energy company working across emerging markets; Johan Falk, co-founder and CEO of the Exponential Roadmap; and then finally Igmar Renshag, CEO and co-founder of We Don't Have Time. From the media dimension, they in fact launched a We Can Do It campaign last year at COP27. So over to you, Veena, first for quick remarks.
Thank you, Maya. Really appreciate this opportunity to be a part of the solution and to show how we probably sort of working on all of the points that I heard in the last 1 hour. So I heard that the climate crisis is a systemic crisis. I heard that we need intergenerational responsibility. I heard that we need transdisciplinary, sectoral co-creation. I also heard that there's a loss of trust within the climate regime. And in a way, in a nutshell, if you see, these are some of the things that we're trying to tackle with the Climate Youth Negotiator program. So the big effects that we're trying to really bring is to say first, trust back in multilateral system, intergenerational justice and climate justice. And we thought, how could we do this? We could potentially use young people as tools. We could create a global capacity building program where we developed effective leaders who could potentially change the current multilateral negotiations and decision making on climate. So this is our way of rebelling by working with the system, but silently disrupting the system by infiltrating the system with young people, civil society, young people, and young people who are actually doing real-time work on the ground, who know what is needed when we talk about negotiations and okay, what outcomes we need, and trying to see how can we connect the system, be that bridge where we connect the institutions and the young people and the knowledge and the network and everything that they need, and bring them on board as negotiators for their countries so that they're a part of the decision making and they can silently revolutionize the space in a way. So this is what we've been doing. Last year, we worked with 26 countries and we trained 50 young negotiators who were at COP27, representing their countries, negotiating for their countries. And this year, we're working with 54 countries and we have trained 175 negotiators, of which 122 are actually at COP28 with their official delegations and with a negotiation mandate. Now, this is really powerful because they have a voice. And now it's up to us to see how can we make sure that they are heard. And it is actually through then people like you all starting to trust these young people and their opinions and giving them that responsibility, as we say, because yes, we're trying to come on board and say, let's work together. Let's shift and share responsibilities and wisdom and knowledge and so we're trying to do that. So we had a 3-day training right now, and I'm in a cafe near the desert because the training is still going on. All of the negotiators are here. But this is our way of looking at building effective leadership. And I just want to add one more thing to say that we're 4 co-founders who started this, and we started it last year. But it was not just us who made it a reality. This whole governance commission, the report, has been about building strong collaborations. And I want to say that what we've done, it has been only possible because of really effective and very strong collaboration with multiple other people and institutions and entities. We have over 100 people who have come together to sort of support us, including Mary. Mary had a conversation with some of our negotiators a month ago, actually. Neshan, Sandrine, Club of Rome. So there's a bunch of people that we are talking to, working with, and with you too, Maya. So I see that we're already in the right direction. And it was really beautiful to see that everything that you're talking about in the report in a way that we're already starting to work towards, but there's so much more to look at. And in the time to come, that's what we would love to focus on.
Very promising. Thank you so much. Neshan, over to you.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for the invitation and a great privilege to be here today. And on behalf of both the Mobilizing Earth Governance Alliance as well as the Earth Trusteeship Working Group. And just to add my voice on behalf of these organizations and groups or coalitions to congratulate the Global Climate Commission for bringing out this report, possibly at a very, very critical time, as the speakers before me mentioned, to the wider public to share possible solutions or best practices to solve some of the problems that are necessarily part of our generation and not to be passed on to the next. Briefly, to say a few words about these 2 organizations, the Mobilizing Earth Governance Alliance, which was referred to at the very beginning by Richard, is established as a coalition of civil society organizations working in cooperations with governments to strengthen existing environmental governance mechanisms and institutions to establish further additional ones. It provides a wide ranging platform of reports and proposals and campaigns for the environmental governance framework and plans needs. And it's co-founded by the World Federalist Movement, the Global Climate Commission, and the Citizens for Global Solutions, and supported by various organizations, including the Trusteeship Working Group. The MEGA website is officially launched today, but the official launch of MEGA will happen early next year. The trusteeship initiative was established a few years ago, in fact, 5 years ago at The Hague, with the launch of the Declaration of Trusteeship, which looks at both human rights and responsibilities for future generations. And a trusteeship brings together a coalition of forces, including the Right Livelihood Foundation, the World Future Council, the New Zealand Environmental Centre, as well as work of those who tread the path before us. And here I mentioned two individuals who are of great importance to ensure that the spirit of those who were here before us is mentioned. This is late Judge Veera Mantri and late Miss Polly Higgins, two wonderful leaders, one a judge of the International Court of Justice, considered father of international environmental law. Polly Higgins, a huge energy on the ecocide movement. And the trusteeship, the stewardship and guardianship was mentioned by several of the speakers, including Maria at the very beginning and Mary, which I think is a critical part of the coalition building process that is called Smart Coalitions through the Global Climate Commission. So we look forward to supporting all the proposals, but Maya, to pick two, of course, is recommendation 5 on elevating environmental governance within the multilateral systems. And as mentioned by the young person, Sophie, the importance of young people strengthening international law, including ICJ, is recommendation number 7 with innovation in international law and legal institutions. Thank you and very best to everyone.
Thank you so much, Nishan. Now over to our business interlocutors. First, Marcello, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are. 3 points very quickly. There are 300 million companies in the world, employing about 50% of the world population. And government generally don't really know how to empower and govern these businesses, these entrepreneurs. So there is a real gap. I've been working in this space for 30 years. Lately, I have created, together with others, the movement of B Corps and benefit corporations. There are 28,000 companies in 95 countries working on the agenda that you all share today, and a wider agenda of creating a regenerative economy. And my message is, if only we could use the models and the examples of such companies, Patagonia and others, you know, there's amazing iconic companies, use these example models to inspire the 300 million other countries in the world, we could really make a difference. So we do this every day. All these companies every day, they've created coalitions like the Net Zero Coalition, over, I think, 2,000 companies now working on their CO2 emissions and so forth. So companies are, the heart of the economy, and economic system, we discussed it earlier. I think it's very, very important to, of course, carbon pricing and natural capital pricing, etc. And I've seen it over the years. There's a lot of innovation going on, of course, particularly in the smaller, medium-sized companies. And a lot of these are actually working on this agenda, trying to find solutions to the challenges we face, the SDGs and so forth. But the missing trick is, how do we go from 30,000 companies to 300 million companies? And there I look to governance and governments, UN and others, and it's an open invitation to work with us and other such groups of companies to really bring it down to the level of every business. In even smaller companies are very, very important to do that. And I close by saying there is no good society without a good economy. In a way, economy is how people started trading, exchanging products at the beginning of times. And too often, the macroeconomists, I am also an economist, but macroeconomists that are in governments don't really know how to trigger the levers that make innovators and entrepreneurs work for the good of all. And that is something we hope to be able to bring forward with our work and with your work. Thank you very much, Maya, and colleagues.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marcello. Look forward to working together on those levers. Badra, over to you for quick comments.
Hi, thank you, Maya, for inviting, and congratulations to all the commissioners. Quick one from me is that I really liked from the report is the the GEA, which is the global environment agency, which is create the central hub. And I always believe, like people where we work, Sunways, that we work at a very lowest level of pyramid, and we feel that the lowest level of the pyramid, the larger populations should be a part of the entire ecosystem. The way we have envisaged our innovations, where we able to deploy more efficient and effective way of those solutions, we have seen that a lot of challenges come when we work with the government, and we see that the way the Commission is working on the global governance, the framework where these kind of solutions could be shared with a larger framework. Would we have the multiple larger country could be a part of that effective way of deploy the solutions? And I think this is a more way where we could able to bring not only the effective solutions, but also the understanding of the bringing the capital, understanding the financial risk, getting the financial institution on the board. So predominantly that entire framework could be the more effective way in terms of the getting the solutions. We already predominantly, we all as an ecosystem, we know these are the problem, but some of the non-state actor like us, we predominantly working on these kind of the innovation solutions. And we always glad to work with the commissioner, which come with these kind of reports, which envisage that these kind of solutions could be distributed across the the larger framework, and the impact of those solutions, like we work like availability of a daytime electricity to lowest level of pyramid. Now we are talking about the energy equality. We are talking about the residual energy. And as I rightly said, one of the commissioners said that the energy should be a part of the solution, not energy should not be the problem. And the way the Sunways and we working on some of these solutions in terms of the deploying the large renewable energy or a mid-size or a small-scale decentralized project could be a part of the framework in terms of commissioners. And congratulate again the commissioners for bundling up the amazing report, and look forward to participate more.
Well, thanks, Badra. Over to you, Johan Falk.
Thank you, Maya, and congratulations to an excellent report. The Exponential Roadmap Initiative, yes, we bring together the leading transformers and disruptors with a common mission to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. And as Marcello highlighted, it's really about creating a critical mass of companies with the right compass direction, so we can tip the complete economic system. So that is a theory of change, and business can contribute in three ways. The first is to set the compass really to halve down emissions in line with science by 2030 towards net zero, well before 2040. And we need strong accountability framework, like we're working with Race to Zero, the H-leg UN group, in order to get that in place, because we need a common play field for companies in order to both celebrate the leaders but avoid greenwashing. The second thing that companies need to do is create and scale climate solutions, actually solutions which avoid emissions, cut out emissions. This is happening as we speak, of course, renewable energy, electrical vehicles, but there are a number of solutions which we need now to push over the tipping points, because it's not scaling sufficiently fast. Like everything from circularity to fossil-free materials to regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry, etc. But all these solutions are growing as we speak, but we need a 5x speed. We need to make it a race to the top, basically, where companies, cities, regions start to compete on where they are on the exponential S-curve. So that's really my vision within 2 years, a race to the top where we get the competition. Finally, the third point is mobilizing the business community in the front line to really put the pressure on stronger policies. We need really strong policies. Removing the subsidies, we need a common play field between companies, and remove the blockers for scaling climate solutions. There are strong blockers which basically take down the speed. So we're very happy with the report, and we look forward to collaborate moving forward, Maya. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Johan. I love this 5x speed and taking away the blockers. Look forward to working on that together with Mega, Civil Society Alliance, et cetera, and partners. Okay, over to Ingmar. And just to let everybody know, we're going to go over to take a few last questions. We understand if speakers and others have to drop off, but we want to have a little bit of time to have a few more questions. Ingmar, over to you.
Thank you, Maya, and thanks for inviting me to this fantastic report launch with great people. And I wish that the world were having us in this room leading instead of some other crazy people not doing what's needed to be done. So what is We Don't Have Time? We are the world's largest social media for climate solutions. So I can really recommend you to download our app and join our community if you're not already there. For COP28, we're going to be in the blue zone broadcasting with hundreds of different speakers, everything from business to policy to scientists to activists. And we have one big solution that we want to amplify at this COP, and I think it's very timely, and that is it's time to phase out fossil fuel and tell it like it is. And I don't think that will be in the official meeting maybe discussed freely, but we will discuss it freely. And we will mobilize businesses, scientists, civil society, youth, and everyone around this simple message. It's time to phase out fossil fuel. That's the real solution to the climate crisis. As you know, we need to do so much more for the planetary crisis, but we really need to phase out fossil fuel. And I would like to just show a short campaign where we're going to mobilize youth during COP with the help of AI. We transform their voices into their future. And that is a strong messaging, I think. You can see for yourself. Just 1 minute and I'm done.
This is transmission attempt 81. My name is Sam, and I'm speaking to you from the year 2050. Now, climate change is accelerated, and the impact is felt daily. Rising sea levels, scorching heat waves, raging wildfires, hurricanes and droughts displacing millions. No one is safe. No one is unaffected. Everyone suffers. But this is not a distant scenario, because all of this is actually happening right now. The choices world leaders make today will determine the kind of world we will live in tomorrow. The future is now.
Cut.
Nice. Do you think they'll listen to this?
Yeah, I look like an old man.
So that's just a sneak peek of what we're going to do. And I'm linking to our hub, wedon'thatime.org COP28 hub, where everyone can tune in to the broadcast from the meeting, wherever you are.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ingmar. Very, very powerful. And the role of media and communications is so vitally important to get these policy shifts. So really look forward to working further with you. So we are indeed out of time over time, but we have a few questions if some of the panelists can still stay for a moment. Let's see, there is a question about, we have a lot of our business speakers still on. There's a question, how do you recommend engaging corporations in the solutions as they are a key lever in the fight? And how do we navigate the tension between capitalism and a shift to more of a stakeholder capitalism and inclusion of real costs with the very notion of value for a livable planet? I don't know, Marcello, you might be
I'd like to say
answer that.
I'd like to say thank you for the question. This is what we are doing in the B Corp, benefit corporation, and wider allies. Often people don't know. They think business is one uniform kind of mass, but actually it's obviously quite fragmented. And there's more and more. I mean, I started this journey 30 years ago, working with the UN. There's Global Compact, which Kofi Annan started in the late 90s, already has grown to a huge movement of 20,000 companies. And we try in the B Corp movement to be even more progressive. So there is a lot of success, but what I said earlier, we have to scale. How do we scale from 30,000 companies or so to 300 million companies? And so far, we haven't been able to find governments. Maybe the EU is the only government that understands a bit more how to actually. Someone said it earlier, entrepreneurs, innovators, they need to know what the rules are, what are the kind of guardrails. And within those, they can do anything, as we know from history. So governments should really create challenging rules and challenging objectives, and businesses would basically follow them. And this is a very simple thing that is generally not done. Look what happened in the US now with the IRA bill. Yes, it is money, but it's also a governance mechanism. So we need action by governments to steer business towards the right directions. The final thing I wanted to say is, I'm an economist, but most economists, macroeconomists, they don't understand the work of entrepreneurs. So they think that by, working on inflation rates and interest rates, you change the economy, but actually it's much more the innovation, the entrepreneurship that goes on at a micro level in each single company. So I would love to see more of these disruptive companies being part of this governing discussion. Thank you.
Brilliant, amazing suggestions. Let's talk further about all of that. Excellent. And maybe I can pose a few questions to Nobuo Tanaka from the intergovernmental space. There's some very interesting questions, if you're willing. So firstly, a question from Andreas Bummel. Andrea Abdenamur stresses a loss of trust and lack of representation in global climate governance regime. Is the proposal of establishing a global parliamentary assembly seen as a way to address these issues? What impact can it have? So on increasing, parliamentary capacities at the international level. And then secondly, Pratik Patil asks, how do we try to navigate toward global coordination and governance amidst the current context of growing international and domestic polarization? So some tough questions, but with your amazing multilateral experience, Nobuo, I'm sure you have some interesting insights.
Yeah, Parliament idea is very interesting, which is already tested in the European Union as such. So it's a governance of the regional or international mechanism in the European Union is certainly one of the models which we may try to develop with other regions. But can we make such kind of governance mechanism globally? This is a really challenging thing. But this kind of different phase or multi-stakeholders mechanism of the European Union is certainly very interesting one. And international body like which we are proposing as the Global Environment Energy Agency or IEA or UN, some kind of technical or legal solution is much better than the politicization of the issue, because politicization makes it impossible. Like in a case of Ukraine and Russian problem about the gas transportation or transit, which could be solved in the energy charter agreement much more amicably. Maybe it takes a longer time to make a peaceful solution or technical legal solution or dispute settlement mechanism. But unfortunately, both sides, I mean Russia, neither Ukraine took this option, because they prefer using the power and Russia as such, and Ukraine tried to use the power of collective power by joining the European Union. So this creates the solution much more difficult. So creating the global energy environment agency, or just such like WTO, may make a more technical legal solution for the global dispute, like climate change mitigation. So we cannot solve everything by negotiation of 150 countries, each one. So technicality or legality, we can mandate the organization with certain conditions, and maybe may solve more technical solution. I think international body can be utilized as such. It is a challenge, but I think for this kind of complex issue of climate, environment, and energy must be treated more technically and legally by the professionals or experts in that area.
Excellent. I think we're very much on the same page. Thanks for those excellent insights. And I think that's a perfect place to end. Technical governance in line with the science, with expertise that can really support and help the international community move through this historical crossroads. And we're very, very much on that page in the Commission. So just to end, refer everyone to the report. And we just thank you so much for joining us today in this launch. And as was said by Maria Fernanda and others, this is only the beginning. We look forward to working with you all further in the future. And apologies that we didn't get to all your rich questions and comments, but we hope very much that these conversations can continue going forward. And thanks so much for all of our speakers and for your perseverance in this very, very rich program. So to be continued, and thank you all very much. Goodbye for now.